Hey guys, welcome to the rollout. I'm Linsay Rousseau.
And I'm Genevieve Marie. Hello and welcome. Apparently, we all came to play today.
If you can't tell what we're going to talk about, well, there's something wrong with you.
It just means that this is not the show for you.
Yeah. And we have one of our favorite guests back. Yay! Morgana Ignis is back.
I'm really glad that I'm not only back, but chose the appropriate background that we all chose some variation of. So it's a mind connect already. We're already all melded and mind connected.
We're all welded.
We all have our own non-copywritten.
Yes, that is, yes. This is our
generic digital background.
A fair use X's and O's.
And I love that we all chose a different one.
Well, mostly because thanks to COVID, I can't find my complete Trinity costume. So I had to improvise. Luckily, I still found the sunglasses, but
if it's black and shiny, it's going to work.
It was black and shiny.
Right.
Yeah. Luckily, it is not 100 degrees outside. So we can do this right now.
Awesome. Well,
yeah.
Obviously, today we are going to be talking about the new Matrix trailer that has just dropped and all the craziness that has been jam-packed inside of it.
Right. Yes. So much. And there's so much fan speculation, and we're just going to speculate more, I guess, because that's what fans do. They speculate. So
this is what the trend is.
and that trailer was very clearly designed. I mean, there are teaser trailers, and then there are trailers that are specifically designed for fans to have no idea what's going on and just to be excited about the fact that they have no idea what's going on. And that was very much this. It told us nothing about what the story is or where Neo is placed into it, what the other characters' connections with them are.
Yeah.
It basically is a trailer that gets you excited because by the end of it, you have more questions about what this movie is going to be about than you did before.
Which is, one of the things that we love about The Matrix is it makes us question everything, including this trailer. I mean, okay, so what are some of the things we can take away? So we know Neo and Trinity have no knowledge of each other or of the Matrix, seemingly. They are living in modern reality, and we don't know how they got there. We don't know why they're there, but they don't seem to know anything that happened over the past 20 years.
Except for that they're paying sky-high rent in San Francisco.
Well, that is accurate. That is accurate. And
that is the worst simulation, is having to pay San Francisco rent.
Having lived there for 8 years, I agree with this.
They are living in a world that clearly does not involve the John Wick films, considering Keanu looks just like John Wick in this one. He's got the beard and the hair.
And apparently living the high life, because seeming what I think is his place looks pretty swanky in San Francisco. That's a pretty penny.
Yeah, he's got a very different lifestyle than when we saw in the first Matrix film, where he's like just some broke hacker eating ramen in a closet. So
I think he still is a programmer. In the trailer, we do see that he works for what appears to be a company called Deus Ex Machina, which subtlety is obviously
right. No,
it's not the Wachowskis. Like, it's not good because it's subtle.
So obviously he could have gone any of the tech company routes and made a shit ton of money with said company,
right? And so he's got a swank new apartment, not living off top ramen in like a little closet in San Francisco. He's got enough room for a clawed footed bathtub, and for a rubber duck, which the rubber duck honestly was my favorite part of the trailer.
Yeah, because
that felt so real. That felt like the rubber duck on the head in the bathtub actually felt like quarantine just summed up in one simple picture.
Right.
Which even fans are speculating about the rubber duck.
Well, I think it's because the Wachowskis never do anything by accident. Like,
no,
everything in their films has a purpose. And so if that was important enough to make it in the trailer, you've got to think that maybe it means something. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe he just likes ducks.
Yeah, or she's literally screwing with us and just included it because it doesn't mean anything, but all the fans are gonna like just talk about this.
They're gonna fixate on the duck. Exactly.
Right. I forgot who it was. I think it might have been New Rock Stars that had pointed out that the duck is actually based on another hacker's method of like having a rubber duck and then like talking to the rubber duck whilst undoing or writing code just to make sure that the code makes sense. And that I thought was very interesting because that's so specific that it probably is true and why the duck is there. Right. It seems so strangely specific to like the hacking and the fact that there's a person out there that talks to a rubber duck. You know what I mean? Right. So that I mean, like, but the attention to detail and the little bits and pieces that are added in that, I mean, fans, obviously they go through like hours and hours and hours of researching each tiny little piece of what we see in trailers and, you know, other pieces of media is amazing. And so I think what you can compare this trailer to is the rabbit holes that you can go down with Doki Doki Literature Club. Right. Where the more you look at it and the more you dig into it, the more you get out of it, the more questions there are, but also the more gratifying it is because it does splinter off into all these different theories and fun things. So it's more like an ARG, it feels like, for the audience.
Well, and there's so many I don't know if we can consider them Easter eggs, but you know, like when you really dive in, the fact that like Neil Patrick Harris's character, you know, he has a black cat in his office and you're like, oh yeah. And then like he's wearing blue frames and you know, gosh, I always mess up pronouncing her name. Oh my gosh, I'm the worst when it comes to names. But Chopra's character, she's wearing red frames. And so, you know, it's like, okay, well, the doc's prescribing blue pills, so maybe she's there to free his mind with the red pills. And, you know.
Right. Yeah, that was very interesting to me as well. Like getting into like the whole, you know, doctor's office therapy thing. Like obviously we're seeing that there are now different ways in which the Matrix or you know, the rulers of the Matrix are trying to suppress variants from breaking out and getting free. They clearly understand humanity a little bit more than they did in this would be the 7th iteration of the Matrix. In the 6th, or you know, any of the other iterations of the Matrix that came before it, because I mean, in the other iterations of the Matrix, you have things that were added like ghosts and vampires and werewolves, and humanity was just like, no, what the hell is this? The machines are obviously getting smarter and smarter and finding out ways to kind of put the boot on the variants and the anomalies and keeping them locked into the Matrix via ways of you know, prescribing the blue pills via making the people think that maybe they have like some sort of psychosis or mental illness. And I'm sure there is other ways that they do this too. Apparently, I mean, they still have agents. However, it looks like they also have agents in the form of regular people on the street. I don't know what the green in the eyes is, but I'm thinking that maybe there's more than just agents now that can police people, which I mean, that also makes sense sociopolitically as far as making statements and stuff like that. So I think that plays into a larger part of the Matrix getting smarter.
Yeah, I mean, and it's really interesting. I mean, because you know, some of the things that are in it just have you wondering what direction they're going in, because you know, the scene that everyone's been freaking out about is the scene where you're in a movie theater and you see the Matrix on the big screen in the movie, and you're just like, what are we going super meta, like Scream, whatever? And you know, all of a sudden the Matrix really was a movie that came out in 1999 and we're just like watching it. Yeah.
Or is the Matrix trying to trick you
right
into thinking that it was a movie and or video game and or whatever it's trying to pretend that it is or was? And that was very interesting, because you have the movie theater, you have the big screen, but then you also have the mirror that he's looking into, and it's all in the same theater. And that's going to be an interesting set piece as far as the movie goes and the narrative, because clearly that's like either the big gotcha moment or the big reveal. So hopefully and I honestly don't want there to be another trailer that comes out that explains anything.
No, I don't want it. I don't want it at all.
I think she knows what she's doing. I think interesting note on this one is that it is not it's not the Wachowskis, it is just Lana.
Just Lana.
Yeah, Lily actually bowed out of this one. So
yeah,
it's going to be interesting to see how that kind of changes, since their dynamic for all their projects previously was very much the two of them bouncing ideas off of one another. So it's going to be interesting to see how tonally this feels different with it just being Lana Wachowski writing and directing it.
Go ahead. Yeah.
So, like, as far as like the socio-political stuff goes, thinking about where we are now with technology and how absorbed we are in our technology now versus when the original film came out, like, there are so many more statements that could be made now that, you know, especially after COVID and us doing things like this.
Yeah.
You know, we you know, this alone is very much like, this is very of the Matrix. You know, we were living and socializing, communicating almost directly through technology due to outside forces keeping us inside and keeping us quarantined. So seeing her play with that whole idea of living in an alternate digital reality in 2022 versus 1999, I'm very excited to see what direction they can go with that. You know, the film came out before social media really blew up, before most people were literally kind of creating avatars of themselves, like, you know, as far as like how we augment ourselves for photos and things for Instagram and Twitter, where we're almost like creating ideal versions of ourselves that we're putting out there into the world. I'm very excited about all the different thematic points that they can hit again in this time frame.
Right. Well, because obviously they started filming pre-COVID. Then, you know, I know because my brother worked on the film and they literally finished filming in San Francisco right before lockdown hit. Obviously, there was a delay in production before they were able to get to Germany to film the rest of the film. So obviously, you know, this was written pre-COVID, but still written in the era in which we had already lived through a horrendous election, you know, the past 4 years of God knows everything that went on, you know. So I'm really interested to see, because, you know, Lana and Lily have never been, they're not hyper political, but there's definitely socio-political undercurrents to everything that they do. And so I would not be surprised if any of that plays out in this film.
Right. Well, they also really focus on in the trailer, the one scene where it is the shot of the mirror in the elevator, where Keanu Reeves is looking up at the mirror and everybody else around him is on either an iPad or a smartphone. And so it shows like that is definitely going to be a part of the film. Like everybody has already kind of, I mean, we've already become almost almost like we have augmented ourselves, not like we have inserted any like computer chips or, you know, cyborgian like you know, stuff into our bodies. However, we are kind of blurring the lines between human and cyborg by the fact that we could not function the same without our smart devices, without our computers and our technology. So we are, as Morgana said, creating different versions of ourselves, creating a different personality and persona that is purely shown online, as well as the one that exists in the how we experience what the real world is. So it's going to be very interesting how they deal with that. I also noticed that one of the books that Keanu Reeves has in the movie, where he hides like all of his hacker junk in, it looks like is actually Jean Baudrillard's Simulacra and Simulations.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was really funny because obviously that plays into the online personas and all of that. But also it plays into the fact that even the book is kind of just simulacra.
Yeah.
Because he's hiding shit in there. It was a funny joke. I liked it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's going to be interesting because I think that the Matrix probably realized that it had to grow smarter, or the arbiters of the Matrix realized they had to grow smarter, because there's probably a lot easier ways for people to connect with other people and kind of figure out what the game is, you know?
Right.
Like there are far more online forums that you can go on now where there are the conspiracy theories and the rabbit holes and things that you can just dive down and become part of these communities that, you know, are wondering if this is the real world or, you know, all of that stuff. So that is particularly going to be fascinating to see how, and there's so much of it. There's so much good juiciness to dive in there, but also it can also get very complicated. So I'm very interested to see if she narrows in on like one particular aspect, or if it's going to be like biting off a little bit more than she can chew, which honestly, I think that she's got this shit on lock. If the trailer has anything.
Keanu's given, you know, recently just gave a statement saying how much he loved the script and everything. And, you know, I feel like he wouldn't have said something like that if he didn't feel like this was where it needed to be. And the other interesting thing is when they've been talking about it, and either she or maybe some other people in the production, they're saying that this is a sequel to the original Matrix. Not that this is continuing the trilogy, you know, so whether or not that's deliberate, you know, okay, are we pulling a Terminator? Are we retconning? Are we considering the first movie to be the only movie and the other two never happened? Or, you know, it's just been very interesting how they've been wording some of the press materials that specifically say it's a sequel to the first movie.
Yeah, that is interesting, because if that's the case, then there's even more to explain there. You know, we have to explain at that point, we're clearly not getting Morpheus in this. We're clearly not getting Lawrence Fishburne in this. So we have to sort of explain where he went if this is a direct sequel to that film, when we're not including the Animatrix or anything that happens after that. It's clearly something that I'm sure she's thought about for a long time. There's been the rumors and the discussions about another Matrix film for so long now. And I'm sure, just, you know, like Genevieve was saying, you know, we, at this point almost don't need to become cyborgs and have these implants and stuff. Like our phones are glued to our hands. It might be an external piece to ourselves, but it's still very much a piece to ourselves, you know? And every year with technology changing, things are getting more and more connected directly to our phones. Like this is how we are paying for things. Like our cards are now on our phones. We can use our phones to pay for things, to order things. We're using our phones to feed ourselves basically by ordering food using our phone. Like we are so dependent on the technology in our hands that in this case, you know, the ones in control of technology and the matrix and everything like that are completely, you know, involved with that. We are voluntarily giving ourselves over to this system. You know, it doesn't even need to fool us into it. It's like we are voluntarily, this is all of our information, this is all of our personality, this is all of our presence, this is all the people we communicate with. Like we've created an entire system for ourselves, like plugged into these devices.
Well, and then with COVID, it just took all that and doubled down, because people were literally at home, you know, especially for those of us that lived in areas, you know, we're all in LA where we were locked down. We couldn't have survived without technology. You know, everything was digital. Like here, you can't pay cash anything anymore for most things. Like most places don't accept cash anymore. Everything has to be on your phone or on your card. And, you know, now it's touch everything. And, you know, with obviously all the food delivery services and the grocery delivery services, it's like, with COVID, we realized we couldn't function without technology. It just, so it's just made it even, it's amplified that even more.
Oh yeah. Let's see. Well, let's go back to the not Lawrence Fishburne Morpheus. I think that tells us one of two things. Either the animatrix and all of the extra material that came after the 3 movies is real, because in those, in all that extra stuff that we got, we do have what could be considered the canonized death of Morpheus. And this could be another iteration or a reproduction of Morpheus via the Matrix, maybe, or via maybe they came up with the technology in whatchamacallit, the actual human space outside of the Matrix.
Oh, in Zion?
Yeah. Maybe they have figured out a way to preserve either like the soul or, you know, what constitutes as the soul digitally, and then make like a cyborg or replication, because in the actual trailer you see that some sort of replicated human being is being made in this sort of like blue light machine, and it looks like there's like little nanobots that are being put together, and that's creating a human being. So that could possibly be Morpheus, or it could be, like you said, Linsay, and it actually is just a continuation of the first movie, and and that's it, no further. Maybe there's a different story behind Morpheus. But I do know that a lot of people view the canonized death of Morpheus as what it is, the real, you know, that's what happened. So who knows? And it's going to be very important to the story, because Morpheus, in the trailer at least, seems to be the first one to offer Neo the red or the blue pill.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's also, I mean, it seems very fitting that this is almost exactly 20 years later. I mean, 22 years, but and you consider the generation that were influenced by this movie. I saw this movie when I was a senior in high school, so I was 18, 19. And it was like transformative for me. It was one of those movies where I literally sat in the theater for like 30 minutes after the movie and was just like, what did I just see? And, that's the generation that are now producing and directing, and like, those are the bigger, the people who've made their way up in the industry now. And it's like, it almost seems like this is, almost seems like a throwback to the Gen Xers, which are kind of the forgotten generation, so many people say. And, the fact that they're bringing back a film that was so paramount 20 years ago, and still bringing back, the same, the characters whose careers were launched by this film, just seems so fitting to me. And I wonder if, that has anything to play into it as well.
Right. Well, I think that you touched on something very interesting, and it's that this movie has had such a profound impact on your and Morgana's and my generation. So profound. And I was one of my coworkers the other day, I was talking about the trailer in the break room, and one of my coworkers was like, oh, I've never seen The Matrix, any of them. And I know, crazy, right? And
I have a poster hanging in my kitchen.
Well, they're also not, they're either a cusper or they're more like a Gen Z. And I was like, well, your age, like I can understand why you haven't seen it. However, I was like, it's interesting to think about, because of the fact that The Matrix has such a profound, like historically such a profound effect on every single Hollywood action film that came after it, that I would actually put it in the library of one of the most important films for action movies ever made.
Right.
Like
Absolutely.
you can,
Absolutely.
it's not, I would even be like, all right, you need to see Citizen Kane, you need to see Psycho, you need to see The Matrix. Like it would also be in there, that it has such a profound lasting mark on cinema and on the span of two different generations, that it is that important.
And just culture and style too. I mean, I think like the early 2000s very much adopted so many elements of like the stylistic.
I mean, trance music was, obviously like that was the heyday for Nine Inch Nails and a lot of trance and Paul Oakenfold. And, so you like black leather and vinyl and all of that was very much in the zeitgeist in this era too. Now, which came first, that could be debated back and forth. But yeah.
Let's just put it this way. I don't think Oakley Sunglasses needs to sell another pair to keep their fashion brand open, really, or viable.
Leather trench coats were definitely flying off the shelves for years.
Sure. I had one.
For sure.
I did too. I wore it like every day in high school, and I live in LA, so I was wearing that damn thing in like 98-degree weather.
I had my leather trench coat from The Matrix, and then I had my wool trench coat from The X-Files. So it's
amazing.
But I was also living in Northern Virginia, so at least I did have winter to justify that.
Yeah, that actually counts. That actually calls for coats.
It does. And then I moved to LA, and I was like, I finally got rid of those jackets. I was like, I can't justify these on the West Coast.
There's very little reason to own a leather trench coat in LA except for purely aesthetic purposes.
Right. Also, The Matrix introduced an entirely new fighting style for Western audiences. Of course, wire work and stuff had been done overseas, in China. However, it was kind of the first time that type of wire work and the slow-mo and the sort of more animated action sequences showed up in a mainstream Western film and actually did and performed well and was received well by Western mainstream audiences. And I think that made a way for a lot of other action films to adopt these different ways of doing wire work and stuff. I mean, because wire work is 100% still widely used. It's just kind of more tweaked and altered to look more realistic or less stylized, I would say, than what we see in the Matrix.
Right. Well, and in the original, especially the fight between Neo and Morpheus, that is straight out of those old school Hong Kong, martial arts films. Like I grew up on Jackie Chan, and it's like, and Jet Li, and like that's right out of like Once Upon a Time in China. Or you even look at Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, which came out kind of around the same time. It's like they've always used wire work in a very stylistic, fantastical way. Like you're watching them and you're like, I know this isn't realistic, but it adds almost to the poetry of the film, which I think the Matrix did really, really well. They weren't just trying to use wires to enhance the stunts. It was almost balletic in how they were doing it. And, and of course we've seen an explosion, we saw an explosion of Chinese influenced films. I mean, Jackie Chan's career blew up when he came to the US, around that same time as well. And so, and of course, The Matrix is what launched, Keanu Reeves and the stunt team, and is what allowed us to get John Wick, because the stunt team that he met on The Matrix, they all became best friends and then have worked together since. And that's how we got, John Wick, was because he literally, when he got cast in The Matrix, started training in martial arts and has just kept doing it for the past 20 plus years. And he obviously trusts these guys and works with them. So
yeah, it definitely seems to have changed the stunt industry and the stunt game dramatically from that point. I think we're still seeing satire and parodies and references and things like that to stunts that we saw in The Matrix.
The bullet time. Forever.
We're still seeing that. That's so within our culture.
Yeah.
But the Matrix is very much a testament to everything that the Wachowskis are just fans of. It's so clear that they wanted to bring that over because they were such big fans of Eastern action films and their approach to stunts and all of that. So even though that was already something that we had in America, but it definitely flung that sort of stunt work and that sort of performance style into the mainstream. And then that just became the way you do things. That just became the staple.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, it's, if anything, I'm hoping that this, and like Genevieve, going back to what you said about your coworker having never seen it, I'm hoping that this will kind of, get people interested in that original film and like really understand just how timely, and the fact that it's still timely. You can watch that now and just be like, oh man, yeah, this is the world we are living in. Obviously cell phones are not flip phones anymore, but it was interesting. I went to a party the other day, an Emmy party, and I was standing in line, we're all masked up, and I was wearing a red dress, and I was meeting a friend, and I texted him. I was like, hey, I'm in line, I'm in the parking garage. I'm the girl in the red dress. And he comes down and he's like, oh, was that a Matrix joke? And I was like, yes, it was. And so, it's interesting, the things that still stick with you.
Yeah, it's definitely for anyone in our age bracket, we were of like that target demographic for these sort of films. So it's exciting to go back to that for so many of us.
Well, and then, I mean, obviously we haven't touched on this yet, but, obviously a lot has changed behind the scenes since The Matrix came out in 99. At the time it was the Wachowski brothers. It is now, obviously it's just Lana now, but Lana and Lily both transitioned. And, for the past few decades, scholars and critics and everyone has talked about, what is the gender politics of The Matrix? Is it, discussing the trans, experience? And, are those, it makes you wonder, like, are those some themes that we are going to see in this current iteration that people have just been speculating on for the past 20 years?
Well, I mean, they literally came right out and said it. It is a trans allegory, 100% influenced by that. I'm not sure where Lily and Lana were with each other at the time, as far as really communicating that to each other, or else it's, sort of like, the side eye to each other. It's just like, yeah, what if you could take a special pill that breaks you out of the false reality you're living in and introduces you to an authentic, real self. I'm not sure what those discussions were at the time or where they could even be with themselves, but both of them have come out and said it's very much a trans allegory. Keanu Reeves was told that and said, that's awesome. Yeah. So Keanu was all about it. He's like, oh, that's really cool. It is very funny how the whole idea of the red pill has been co-opted by the right wings so heavily by like people who are very conservative and anti-LGBT and all that, when the red pill is literally a reference to estrogen pills at the time that were red pills. Yeah. So, any of these like far right people who are very anti-trans issues who have adopted the whole red pill idea. It's like, that was created by two trans women as an allegory for their experience to transition. So you talking about taking the red pill is basically you talking about going on hormones and transitioning.
Right.
So ironically now the pills have been predominantly changed to blue pills. So Now it's for me taking the blue pill.
Right. Phoebe Hauser's just like, blue pills. For anybody who is interested in a deeper dive into the trans allegory and kind of the background of all of that, of the Matrix, the original 3 movies, go check out Curio's video on the Matrix sequels. Are good, actually. Sophie does a fantastic job of breaking down the history and parts of the film and stuff by viewing it through a trans lens. And there are some like no such good pieces in there that are just like this is fantastic work. So go check that out. It's Curio Vids. I will we can pop that in the description. I can pop that on, but it's really good. And Sophie also brings up a point about the agents in the Matrix obviously being a policing force, like wanting to come out and stop you from, stop the anomalies from, being who they are and put them back into the Matrix, put them back in line, so to speak. And I think that with this new film, now that we're seeing that there are maybe another iteration of the agents, maybe something that is a little bit more evolved than that, with the people with their eyes turning green, maybe there is also a more volatile, more like more secret force that is going to try and keep people from becoming anomalies, from breaking out of the Matrix. But like it's less like that authoritative, like, you got the suit on, you got the glasses on, I can pick you out in a crowd, and more somebody that it could be a family member, it could be a coworker, or somebody who's going to come and be the person to try and police you, I think that right. I think that is a more nuanced and very realistic way of looking at or evolving the agents' roles when you do look at it through that lens. But yeah, the co-opting of the red pill, blue pill thing by right-wing people is it's hilarious. I actually find it hilarious. It's very like, it hurts and it's very hurtful, obviously, but then it is also, you also have to find the humor in the horror of it.
Right.
You know, like if you don't laugh at it, you'd cry.
Yeah, one of my favorite things was like, I know it was Ivanka Trump responding to somebody on Twitter who's talking about like, you know, it's like, have you taken your red pill? And like Ivanka quote replies that, oh, I've taken my red pill, and Lily just tweets replies underneath, so both of them can go F themselves. Like literally the opposite ideology, the opposite thought process and everything behind what they, you know, what they believe in. And it's just like, you are literally co-opting a trans allegory for
the
party that is currently trying to
destroy
our way of life.
You're also referencing a movie, and you know, Genevieve, we obviously have talked about this a lot on our show about diversity in Hollywood, and The Matrix came out in 1999, and it stars a woman, an Asian man, and an African-American man. Like those are the three leads of the movie. And then obviously you have, you know, Hugo Weaving, Agent Smith. So it's like, if you consider everything we've talked about over the past, you know, if we're covering the film industry over the past 20 plus years and just how bad diversity is and how we still don't have gender parity, and you look back at The Matrix and it's a trans allegory, and it's also an incredibly diverse cast for, especially considering at the time in which it came out. And it, you know, and again with, you know, Trinity and like Carrie Ann Moss can do no wrong. Like she is my soul sister. I just like, I have so much respect for that woman. And, you know, we've previously talked about how, you know, we had Sarah Connor and we had Ripley, and those were kind of like the two badass women that we had. And those were a couple decades apart. And then we got Trinity, and like little girls and, you know, little female identifying people throughout the world were just like enamored with this woman. And I'm sure, you know, the same could have been said for, you know, the Asian community. Obviously, I cannot speak to the Asian community, but it's like, you know, you're finally seeing a character represented in film that just is kicking so much ass. And it was a very liberating moment. I know it was for me, to see that, and just, yeah.
It's going to be interesting to see how that diversity grows in this next film, because despite the fact that it was very much a trans allegory, it was still at a time in which transgender actors and actresses were just not in films. Interesting like note that the character Switch from the films was originally written to be a gender fluid character. Originally that character was going to appear female presenting in The Matrix, but look male presenting in the reality portions of the film. So for whatever reason, that did not make the cut, but it did make the cut because it was 1999 and things.
And I don't know, Harvey Weinstein had something to do with it too. So yeah,
I think in general, even beyond one person, I think just, you know, the general consensus among a lot of people is like, oh, this character probably won't be taken seriously or will be thought to be comedic, like most of that sort of content at the time was treated. But the fact that that was in their heads, and at the time that was something that's like, yeah, this is what this character is supposed to be. You look at the character now, and the character is very androgynous, and there are still elements to that, but it's very clear that at the time they couldn't go that far. They couldn't really, they could make it the allegory that it is, but they couldn't be that, you know,
blatant about it.
Right.
So now it being a very different time now it's like, okay, now we can much more easily see one of any number of well-known trans performers taking on a role in the film.
Right. I think this is a great time to bring up, because I actually talked to my coworkers. How fun. We were talking about The Matrix in the break room, of course, after the one person said that they didn't see it. And I think it would be a great thing to talk about authorial intent versus death of the author, because I honestly think that, and this is my opinion, and we should just go around the room. I think that reading this seeing this film and the films through the lens of authorial intent is extremely important. And the more that you look at things through Death of the Author and the places in which people have seen these films through Death of the Author has brought readings to the table that are very harmful. We did talk about the co-opting of the pill, of the red pill, blue pill, that being just one of many dangerous readings of the Matrix films and co-opting of the stories of the Matrix films, especially the first one. But looking at this through the lens of authorial intent and what was meant by these films, I think is, to me, it holds more purpose and more meaning rather than, and just explaining authorial intent is basically what the author or authors meant by the piece that they put out, like what message that they had intended for the piece. And Death of the Author is basically the artist puts the piece out there into the world, and then it is basically, it doesn't matter what their intent was. Now it is more important to what the audience decides what meaning they're going to put on or get out of the work. Like, obviously both things are always in play, but one usually holds more sway than the other. And I honestly think that these films, you get more out of it when you look at it through the lens of authorial intent. That's just my personal opinion. So I would be very interested to hear what you guys think.
In this case, I 100% agree on that. There are other directors who are phenomenal directors, but they're very much wrapped in the, they're there to tell a good story. They're there to make a good technical film. Yeah. And that's perfectly fine. There isn't necessarily like a big statement that other directors are trying to make other than just making a good film. The Wachowskis seem to go into most of their projects with a specific message in mind. They are trying to convey a specific message for a specific purpose. There are a lot of statements, there are a lot of deep allegories and meaning behind everything that they've produced. I mean, Sense8, which was like an amazing Netflix series that the two of them were involved in, that alone speaks so much to who the two of them are in the creation of that. And to overlook who they are as creators and who they are as visionaries definitely does a disservice to their artwork, because it definitely helps you dive deeper into the material to know who these artists are and where they're coming from with, what they're doing.
Right. Yeah, I mean, if any film is a testament to the lens in which we view society, it is The Matrix, because The Matrix is literally talking about how we filter our reality, how everything we see is shaped by, either the technology that we're using or, so I mean, Morgana put it perfectly. It's like, you absolutely cannot take the artist and separate the artist from the art. I mean, you can make your own interpretations of that art, as everybody does. Everyone, you go to an art museum and everyone's going to have a different interpretation of what it is they're looking at. But when the filmmakers are still alive and they're giving statements about the art that they have created, you can't ignore that and choose to, interpret it. I mean, yes, you can choose to interpret it your own way, but, you're never going to see the film the way they intended you to see it. And of course, we're all going to see it different because we're all coming from different experiences and life, experiences and so forth. But to your point, I think you have to absolutely take that into account when you are watching, and especially a movie like The Matrix. It's not just like a fun rom-com or, even just a straight up action movie. Like, there is so much depth and substance in this film that is directly, challenging us to question our reality. And I think you could absolutely flip it on those right wingers who tried to co-op it and be like, hey guys, this is kind of talking about you and asking you to question everything you've been raised to believe and the echo chamber in which you live that has taught you to distrust and dislike anyone that's different. Maybe it's time you start questioning what you think reality is, because that's not the reality that the rest of the world is living in.
Yeah, and different, that goes for a lot of different art mediums. I mean,
sure.
It's kind of like analyzing a painting by like a Renaissance painter, like a Michelangelo piece or something like that. That's just a beautiful painting that you can talk about the technical expertise of what they've done, but it's a very literal interpretation of something. It's a very literal interpretation of whatever portrait they were painting or something. But then you look at like a piece by Van Gogh, and that painting becomes very different if you don't discuss the artist.
Yeah.
If you don't discuss their mental state, if you don't discuss their intention, if you don't discuss anything they were going through at the time, the painting isn't the same. It doesn't have the same sort of, interpretation. We are discussing a lot of the technical elements of these films and how much they change the landscape of cinema. But as far as the story goes, that comes from such a personal place that, of course, the intention of the filmmaker is for somebody to take something personal away from it themselves, to be able to interpret it in their own way and to be able to connect with it in their own way. But it is so personal that it would do a disservice to the story, and you'd be missing so much context to not listen to what the filmmaker's intent is.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, and to that point, you have to kind of question how much or how little is it the audience's responsibility, at that point, to kind of grapple with the work. Like, obviously, if you're just going to the movie to see it and you see it once and you're like, oh, that was cool, and then you go away, obviously you're not going to come away from it with all of the intended messaging. Like, you're not going to, like, there are just some pieces that I love to go down the rabbit hole and just dig and dig and dig and dig and find out all of the technical aspects, what the meanings of everything was. But obviously there are some people that just want to see a movie and then move on and do that. But then take that same person that wants to see the movie and then move on, but they come across an article that that states, like, the Matrix, it's confirmed that it's a trans allegory, and then it's up to that audience member to decide whether or not they are going to either grapple with that or look into it deeper or even accept that as the reading, or they're just going to be like, no, like, that's totally not what it was about, even though the directors themselves are saying that this is exactly what it is. So these things, I don't know, this is the way that my mind works. It's like, what is at that point, like, what is the audience members' responsibility? What, like, how much of this falls on the directors as far as getting the message across, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, there is no right answer. That's the thing, is there is no right answer, but it does, like, your mind can just go in circles thinking about these kinds of things. But yeah, I totally agree with your point, Morgana, about looking at a piece that has been like a statue by Michelangelo, that most of that stuff is actually made on commission of very, very rich Italian princes and lords and the church, versus something that was made by Van Gogh, who nobody was
suffered
hiring
severe
him.
mental illness and
Right.
died
And nobody was
penniless.
actually hiring him to do any of these pieces. Like
Yeah.
he just did them on his own.
He's also somebody who took off and whose art became significantly more popular after
Right.
his death.
Right.
Because his death created intrigue into his personal life and his personal mental health struggles.
Yeah.
So the context of his life after his death added significant value to his artwork.
Right.
Right. So I thought that was a beautiful point to make. But yeah, is there anything else that we saw in the trailer that we wanted to touch on? I know that I think Sati has come back. I think she actually might be the person with the red glasses. Maybe
that's what they're speculating, and she's been taken under, the wing of the Oracle or something to that effect. Yeah, because obviously, she's no longer with us. So I mean, obviously, we're all just going to have to wait till the movie comes out, and then we're all going to be right back here again talking about the impact of the movie.
Yeah, we'll see if we get another teaser trailer and if it'll be the same sort of thing where it just leaves us with more questions.
Yeah.
Because clearly that trailer worked.
Oh, it totally worked. I mean, and when they were leading up to the trailer release, if you went to the website, you could click on the red pill or the blue pill, and it gave you two different like teasers that weren't even teasers. It was literally just like, Neil Patrick Harris narrating and some flashes, which is something that they've I mean, the marketing for this movie, for all their movies, was obviously incredibly brilliant. So we'll just have to wait and see. And yeah,
they posted the trailer and they were like, gotcha.
Right. And we are all going to go see it. Yes. And if, Shang-Chi is any indication, the movie industry, the theater industry seems to be doing just fine. So I will be in theaters to see that, probably double masked, but I will still be there to see it.
Absolutely. Well, I know I can't wait to don these sunglasses and my best leather tank top again.
Which I will now find because it's buried somewhere.
We are definitely going to make a video when the movie comes out. Morgana, we'd love to have you back on.
Absolutely.
We should all see it together.
Yeah, totally.
But yes, thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you, Morgana, for joining us again. We always love your perspective on things.
Anytime.
It's always magical. So if you like this video, please like, subscribe, ring that bell, do all the things.
Follow us on the social media.
Everybody else asks you to do. Leave a comment down below. We are trying to grow the channel, so if you wouldn't mind clicking into the next video on our playlist and giving us a few more minutes of your time, we would absolutely appreciate that. Thank you so much for joining us today. Please check out Curio's video.
Oh yeah.
Amazing. So good. Amazing stuff there. And we will see you next time. Next week, we're going to talk about Shang-Chi.
Yes. We're so excited. We've got an amazing guest for you, who is going to give such a great insight into the movie, because Genevieve and I were both blown away. And after having done several episodes about how much we were not huge fans of What If, we can now talk about a Marvel film that we absolutely adored.
Absolutely adored.
Yeah.
All right. Well, have a wonderful day, everybody. And we will see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.